Hi there, guys. Welcome to the Skits and Giggles podcast. My name is Kody. I have schizophrenia.
And I'm Kit, and I live with schizoaffective disorder.
And our topic today is travel. So, this might sound kind of strange because I think most people could hop on a plane, hop in their car, and just go without much thought, without really having to do a lot of prep. And I realized early on in my journey with my diagnosis that that's not usually the case for people living with severe mental illness. Especially if you want to prevent burnout and you want to take care of yourself. So, Kit and I travel a lot. I travel a lot in the States for speaking events. Last year, I was on over 50 different flights. So, I am always traveling, always in the air. Kit has a unique experience that I don't have where she gets to travel a lot overseas and she gets to do a lot of international traveling. So, we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about how we prep for traveling, what to expect as a person with severe mental illness while you're doing a lot of traveling, and basically just how we prepare. So, Kit, if you want to start off by talking a little bit about your travel, how you prepare, and then we'll just kind of have a conversation about what works best for us and what we do differently too.
So, my experience mainly comes from the fact that I do international trips at least once a year, but in the past, I've done sometimes multiple international trips in a year before. There was one summer where I went to 5 countries in 3 months. I went to Jamaica, I went to the Philippines, and I went to several countries in Europe, and I had a great time. But there was a lot of challenges that I faced with all of those trips, and I definitely made some mistakes early on. But by the time I got to now, where I am today and where I was 2 years ago when I was starting to travel internationally again after COVID, I've come a long way, and I've learned what works well for me when it comes to traveling with a severe mental health condition, because I cannot just get on a plane and go somewhere. I have to prepare and take lots of precautions to do so.
When you started traveling again after your diagnosis and you said like after COVID, did you have a moment where you're like, yeah, I can just pick up and travel? Because I did that like after my diagnosis when I got stable. I was like, oh yeah, trip. That's easy. I used to travel enough. I used to like just get in my car and drive somewhere. And so I had like a lot of confidence that I shouldn't have had that I could just like pick up and go. Did you have any of that? Or was it like right away you started figuring out that you needed to really like accommodate yourself on trips?
I wouldn't say that I had any kind of confidence that made me think I could do anything. It was more that I had this innate sense of, I need to make sure I do this right, because if I don't do this right, I'm going to screw it up. And if I screw it up, I might end up in the hospital or worse. So I knew I had to be careful. And so I started trying to figure out the precautions that I had to take probably like right away. Like, I don't think I had a moment where I'm like, I totally got this. I mean, I'd say now I kind of totally got this, but it's because I have a system
Yeah.
and I know my system works. And so now I have that kind of confidence, but no, I didn't have that kind back then.
For me, after my diagnosis, when I finally got stable and started traveling, I was so sure that I would just be able to do it with no problem. What I didn't realize is that stress can lead to more symptoms. Stress can lead to, increased symptoms. And so for me, I had to figure that out. So like the first time I went on like a big trip after I got stable, I was not having a lot of auditory visual hallucinations. I was doing pretty good on my meds. At the time, I was still on oral medication. And so I was on this trip and I started getting really stressed about just the travel and missing my flight and all this other stuff. And I forgot that like a lot of stress can worsen symptoms, it can make it harder to function. And so I started having a lot of symptoms on my first couple trips when I was traveling. And I didn't really make the parallel right away. I didn't understand that that's what was going on. And as I started to make small changes, I was less stressed, I had less symptoms, and it made travel just a lot easier. And one of the things I really struggled with, and I know you're going to be able to talk more about this because you're still on oral medication. I'm on a long acting injection now, but when I started traveling, medication was a pain for me because it's one of those things that's easy to forget. It really is. If you forget your meds or you don't bring enough or you don't prepare well enough, it can be really bad and it can cause a lot of issues. And it's something I had to start really prepping for. Like I got an organizer for my pills and I started counting out like weeks before the trip to make sure that if like my trip was at the end of the month, it wouldn't land right when I was supposed to go get a med refill. And if it did land on one of those days, I had to like transfer it to another location. So there's a lot you have to consider with that. I want you to talk about this a little more because you are still on oral medication. And traveling is one of the reasons I quit oral medication, because it was like too stressful for me to try to figure it out. So, like, how do you go about managing that, especially knowing that like forgetting meds is not an okay thing to do with a severe mental illness like schizoaffective disorder, because a few days of forgetting meds can have really big consequences.
It absolutely can. And golly, do I have quite the system when it comes to my medication. So I've never forgotten a medication ever, which
Wow.
is big deal. Super happy about that. Um, Ever. And I take over 10 pills every single night now. Like I have supplements, I have prescription meds. I mean, I have like a whole handful of meds that I take every night. And so what I do when I travel is the TSA does not like it when you just have loose pills.
Nope.
They don't like it. Yeah, they don't like
They're
it at
not a
all.
fan.
Yeah, so I have all of my pills in the original bottles and I put them in a big gallon plastic bag. But that bag goes with me in my personal item on the plane. And so I keep that in the personal item. So I have my meds with me at all times. And then I have a backup supply in my checked bag. So I have some of the meds, like enough meds to get me through like like a couple days, like in my personal item, and then I have the backup in the check bag. And so I have two sources of medication. So if one fails for some reason, I always have the other. And so I kind of split them up. If I have enough in a refill, I have enough for the trip split in each of them. But if I don't have enough for a refill, I take most of it in the personal item since it's always with me. And then I have the check bag for extra in case something horrible happens, like I spill water in a pill container or something,
Yeah.
which has happened at home before and it's drastic. Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. Never get water in pill containers. But that's like the system, like getting my meds there. And so the other big thing with it is like it's important to note that if you have a trip that you are going on and it falls on a time where you get a medication refill, you can actually get insurance to get you an early refill for the trip. That's an important thing that a lot of people don't know, that if you're going on a trip, say you're going like overseas for 3 weeks and you only have 2 weeks of meds, they will be able to give you meds to get through the trip before it. You just have to communicate with your doctor and with your insurance about it. And
Okay.
that's a really important thing. I've had to do that. I have had to do
I
that
didn't know that was even a
because
thing, so that's actually news to me.
yeah, no, it's a great thing that I learned from all the traveling I've done, and so that's how I keep up with everything because I always have it with me, and then I always have the backup supply. And fortunately, I've never really needed the backup supply, but you know, I have it, which means I won't need it. That's kind of how that works, right? So, I'm glad about that. But the other big thing with oral medication is that it has to be taken around the same time every day.
Yeah.
And this is where I talk to my doctor. And this is where I'm going to say the people that are listening to the podcast need to talk to their doctors about it. Because my doctor and I developed a system for me to shift my medication schedules to whatever time zone I'm going. There's a certain method I use, and I'm not going to share the method because I don't want anyone getting any ideas and doing something that might not work for them. But
Yeah.
I have worked out a method with my doctor to shift meds according to the time zone. One of the biggest things that's helped me with that is like if I'm going overseas, whether it's Europe, Asia, etc., I keep on my phone, I have like the world clock function and I have the New York time zone. So I always know what my home time zone is and I can use that to kind of judge, okay, how close is it to when I would normally take my meds? Because when you're on a plane and when you're in another country, the time zones are really hard to manage and figure out. And that's like a really big deal when you're taking oral medication. So, and it also comes like dealing with side effects and sleeping through side effects. And there's a bunch of stuff that has to do with like, because you can't just, I mean, I just can't go to Japan without preparation in that sense. I
Yeah.
have to have that system to shift it over. And so talk to your doctor about how to shift your meds. If you can shift your meds, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. You have to keep taking them at the same time, no matter what time zone it is. And that might be 3 a.m. Japan time. But yeah, that's really the med system I have.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's like I said, that's something that it overwhelmed me. But there was like little things I learned to do, and you had mentioned like TSA, even in like state to state travel, isn't great about having a bunch of unmarked medication in your bag. I couldn't imagine with like international travel. That's got to be just a
Mm-hmm.
headache. But I think a good point that you brought up was just like preparation and making sure like you knew all of that, because I think what stressed me out so much is I didn't know a lot of that. And so, like, I remember the first time I brought my pills, I brought them in a pill organizer without any of my original
Oh.
pill bottles. And yeah, so the face you're making is, yeah, I didn't know that I could not do that. Like, you still have to bring the bottles with. So, like, Allison, my wife, had to, like, go and take pictures to prove that I had prescriptions to these medications. Thankfully, now you also have, like, online, like, you can pull up your charts and stuff online to prove some of that. But it's way easier if you keep it in the pill bottles. And like you can still bring an organizer. So if you're on a longer trip, what I do or what I did do when I was still on a lot of oral medication was I would bring them in the pill bottles, bring an organizer, and like organize it for the trip. So that way, like I still had it. I could keep track of like day and night meds, all of that stuff. That helped me a lot. But I don't know, the stress of like the daily meds, especially when traveling, was just a little much for me. But like systems like what Kit's talking about are great if you can find something that works for you. And like once again, Kit said it there. Bring in your clinical care team on that conversation. Don't just try to figure it out. Remember that we are not doctors. Please don't sue us. Uh, uh,
Important safety tip.
yeah. We are just people living with mental illness. We are not in any way trying to give medical advice, just to clarify.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm just a lab tech with access to PubMed. I'm not a doctor or other mental health care professional.
I think it's important to remember like travel is stressful regardless. Like you can do all of the prep, you can do everything you need, and it's still stressful. So with that, you are more likely to like have symptoms, or you're more likely to struggle while you're on trips. And there's a lot you can do to accommodate that, but there's some that you just can't account for. So I think it's also good to like try to remember that you might need downtime on your trips. I used to be a person who would book every minute of every trip. Like I want an agenda. I want to know where I'm going to be eating lunch at noon and where I'm going to be having dinner at 5 p.m. I realized as a person with severe mental illness, I kind of have to wing trips a little bit, especially if it's like a fun trip and it's not a work trip. Like I need downtime to be able to either focus on self care or be able to relax or be able to regroup after long flights or, you know, God forbid you have a canceled flight or a delayed flight, stuff that you can't account for. What do you do for that? Because like I said, it's stressful no matter what. How do you account for like changes in routine or like changes in travel?
The way I used to deal with it before I was properly medicated, it's like when I went on an antipsychotic, my mood stabilized a lot better. But back before then, I knew that like because there was one time where I went to Europe for 3 weeks, and Europe was it was at a 6-7 hour time shift, and time shifts are, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on. I do want to talk about sleep in this episode, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember back then I knew that when I traveled, it would be a stressful thing, and then once I got there, I would have symptoms. Like I just accepted that I would have symptoms, and mood symptoms specifically, not psychotic symptoms, but mood symptoms specifically I would deal with as a result of the stress of travel. And it was kind of something that I knew would happen, so I just learned to work and live with it. And that was at a time in my life where I was experiencing mood symptoms like all the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any different thing than the usual. It was just like, okay, I'm going to Paris. All right, when I'm in Paris, okay, I'll probably be depressed for a few days after being happy for a few days, and then I'll be happy and sad at the same time for a few days, and that'll just be the trip. And that was what actually happened. I had a great time in Paris, though. I had a fantastic time in Paris. I want to go back to Paris. But the stress did definitely play a role in that, and going overseas is stressful, 100%. I mean, I was like on the plane, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? But yeah, and airports are not designed for people that are mentally ill. They are
Nope.
not designed for it. They are stressful. They are horrible. I hate them. I despise them. I'm also terrified of planes, which is hilarious. And I just hate the whole airplane, everything. But yeah, stress is just something that I've learned to deal with. These days, when the stress is happening, I just try to kind of let things happen and just accept them as they happen. Just kind of have a radical acceptance mindset to everything. It's like if a flight is delayed, all right, that just means I get to hang out in the airport and do this. Okay, it means I get to do this. Okay, on the plane early. That's fun. Awesome. Okay, we're stuck on the runway. Whatever. And so it's kind of like accepting things as they come really helps with the stress of it for me. So that's how I deal with it now.
I've also realized that over time I've learned different ways to make me more comfortable on trips. So, like for instance, I do a lot of speaking events. Like I said, last year I was on over 50 flights going to to and from different events
Wow.
all over the country. And I
Wild, wild.
realized while doing trips like this that I can't be like some speakers who show up the day of or the morning of their event and leave the night of. Like that's just my brain cannot do that. That is way too much stress trying to get to and from, make sure that I don't miss anything, make sure that I'm in a good enough position to share my story because once again, advocacy and sharing your story is also stressful just in and of itself. So with that, I've realized that when I do trips, I need at least to get there the night before and to leave the night after. So I always book several days, even if it's a 1 day event, just because I know that that's how I function best. That's what will prevent me from having symptoms. That's what will allow me to be the most comfortable at these really like turnaround type speaking events. So that's like written into my speaking contract. That's what I do, even when I travel individually, like for fun events, like when I do vacations and stuff. I know that if I want to go to like an example is like a Comic Con, I can't do like a 1 day thing. Like for me, even if I'm only going to be at the event 1 day, I need to come in the night before and I need to stay that night because I can't do that quick a turnaround and not have it lead to like breakthrough symptoms or a lot of stress or a lot of anxiety. So that's just one small thing that I know has helped me when I started doing more travel.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. That's a pretty good tip, actually. I like that a lot. Because I kind of like when I travel overseas, it's like, okay, I'm going there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to do stuff. And it can kind of be a way of triggering symptoms in some cases because I never quite know if I get hypomanic because I do a lot or I do a lot because I'm hypomanic.
Yeah,
Like it's like
fair.
a weird, yeah, it's like a weird thing that I've never quite figured out what it is. And so sometimes like I'll do a lot on a trip and then I'll kind of get a little bit of extra energy from my brain just like kicking it off and I'll be like feeling a little bit better. I won't realize it's hypomania until after the fact.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but I get like that little like energy drink of my brain, and it usually happens when I do a lot. It hasn't happened lately, which is good, but it used to happen a lot in the early days.
Well, and you know, you do a lot of like long trips, which I'm guessing you save like time for downtime, right? Like just time to relax, time to sleep. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you take longer trips. I take day, 2 day, 3 day trips. I did just have like a 2 week trip I took. But even in that, like those are work trips. I'm usually doing stuff throughout. But when I'm not working, I always have downtime. So like, how do you prep for that? Because one, sleep has to be confusing, but also like you need other downtime too, I'm sure.
So I'll talk about two things there. So you talked about sleep, which I've want to talk about sleep, and then talk about downtime. So
Yeah.
those two things are both very important, and I do have systems for both. So when it comes to sleep, the biggest priority I have when I travel overseas is that I have to sleep on the plane. Period. I
Yeah.
cannot stay up because the thing is, if I do stay up, it's gonna trigger symptoms. It's gonna trigger hypomania. Like it happened when I went to Jamaica. I stayed up for like 40 hours in one go, and I was like totally fine the whole time and it was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? And it triggered symptoms. Like I had symptoms. And so sleep is something I prioritize because in people with mood disorders, specifically bipolar disorder, time zone shifts can be really problematic. And some people have issues and get symptoms even if there's a 1 hour time shift. So like daylight savings time can really mess with some people with bipolar disorder. And for me, sleep does affect it. So I know that if I stay up on the plane all the way over there, it's going to cause issues on the actual trip, and that has happened. And so I try to sleep on the plane, and then I do my best to keep to the schedule of the place I'm going to because that helps regulate it. Even though it's kind of a jolt, if I can shift to that time zone quicker, I know that I'm going to be better in the long run and I'm not less struggling. It's harder in places like Japan and the Philippines. That was really hard for me to switch because it's literally a 180
Yeah,
basically.
like a 12 hour or something time difference.
It's wild. It's like why am I awake at what my brain thinks is 3 a.m. But the sooner I switch to the time zone, the better it is for me. So I've just noticed that for me personally, It just works if I just go all in on trying to get to the new time zone. My doctor originally told me a way to like shift my time zone slowly over the course of like a couple days or more to the new place, that it would be less of a shift. But I found out that switching to Europe time zone while still in America is incredibly disruptive to your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that doesn't work out very well. Like if I was retired maybe, but I'm not retired. So it wouldn't so I just found that that's what works for me. That works really well for me is I do that. And I haven't had symptoms on my last two trips, I think, and my dad was like with me on both and he was watching me for the symptoms. I told him, I'm like, if I experience hypomania, I'll believe you this time. And he never said I had it. And so that is how I deal with the sleep stuff. So sleep is a big deal. I try to prioritize it above a lot of stuff. And I have to sleep on the plane. I hate sleeping on the plane, but I have to sleep on the
Yeah.
plane. But you talked about downtime. And so usually these days, my dad is my travel buddy. Like he and I travel. We went to Ireland and Scotland a few years ago, and then we went back to Scotland last Christmas. And because we love Scotland so much, we had to go back. And so when he and I travel, we actually kind of have this habit of like getting up in the morning and then we do one thing during the day. So like we would go to see, like in Edinburgh, we went to the castle. That was the thing we did for the day. And then we had like at the last trip we rented a flat. And so we would go back to the flat and chill and just like have our iPads out and we'd just be doing just chill things and relaxing and sharing things with each other. And we would kind of have that built in, and then we go out for dinner or we go to the local grocery store and get something for dinner. And so we kind of just have that routine set into place where like we do that one big thing, we come back for downtime, and then we go to dinner. And we kind of did the same thing when we went to Ireland and Scotland the first time because we were on a cruise. And so the cruise would get to port, we would get up early and then we'd go and do stuff in the port. We'd come back to the ship. We had like this set table like at a bar, which is kind of funny to me that, you know, me, a recovering alcoholic, ended up at a bar, but it was a cute table and a cute chair. And so we'd go there and we'd like, he would read and maybe I would read, or I'd have my iPad out writing the journal for the trip and whatnot. And then we would end up going to dinner once again. So once again, we do dinner. That would be like the event. And then we go back and we go to sleep. And it's a really chill environment. And like sometimes I feel when I travel, I'm like, do I actually do enough? Do I actually do as much as I should? But when I look back on these trips, I think of them as relaxing endeavors. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people will like do trips like overseas and they'll have like everything packed in and they'll be exhausted the whole time and they just won't be relaxed. And I think vacation should be vacation. And so I know when I travel with my dad, that's how we do things and it works really well for us. And the downtime is really important for both of us to kind of chill out a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think you explained it super well too. I kind of function a little differently where I do want to do as much as possible. So what I do is I have like, especially work trips. So like work trips, I just got back from like 2 weeks in Los Angeles and I love LA. It's like one of my favorite places to travel. Same with New York. So when I'm there, there's always so much I want to do. But what I actually do is if I'm on a work trip, I don't plan anything. Like I know that I have my work stuff from this time to that time, right? And then when that's done, it's pretty much free time until I need to go to bed. And I always, same thing with you and sleep. I know that I need my sleep. Regular people should be getting their sleep, but people with psychotic disorders need
Yes.
their sleep. That is not an optional
Yes.
thing. And
Oh my
I've
God,
struggled with
yes.
it in the past. I've definitely pushed it too far before, but it's something I'm constantly working on. So when I travel, I make sure that I keep up with sleep. And with that, so like from the time my event's done to the time I go to sleep, that's open time. And I basically gauge it every single day. So if I get done with my event and I'm feeling good, I'll go spend my entire few hours of free time, traveling, doing all the touristy stuff, going somewhere. On my recent trip, I took a Waymo, which is a driverless car, which as
Oh
a
my God,
schizophrenic
yes.
person was an unreal experience. uh, but stuff like that. That was something I knew I wanted to do while I was out there, but I didn't put like a day on it. I didn't put a time on it. And I said, if I don't get to it, it's not the end of the world. I'll be back.
Yep.
And I think that's super important is like recognizing that I do have limitations. That's where I struggled when I first started traveling, was admitting and recognizing that I live with a severe mental illness, and that means I do have limitations. And that's not just in travel, that's in a lot of aspects of my life. But especially with travel, I realize that I might not be able to do what everyone else does. I might not be able to go out every single night. I might not be able to attend all the events that people are checking out while they're doing their touristy stuff. And that's okay. Because in order for me to be healthy and to function, I need to set those limitations and I need to know my own boundaries.
Knowing your limits is super important. And when I realized that that was kind of a goal of my treatment was to figure out these special rules that my body lives by, it was game changing because it wasn't suddenly like, oh, I have all this stuff I have to deal with. It's not so great. It's more like, okay, I actually know my boundaries. I know what I'm capable of. And I think everyone should know what they're capable of. Everyone should know where their limits are because there are a lot of people out there that really don't know what their limits are. But I feel like having a mental illness forced me to get that. And I think it's benefited me in the long run because I know what I can do and what I can't do. And when it comes to travel, it's really important to know what you can and can't do so you don't end up in a bad situation.
I would even say that like I want people to know too that like we're talking about travel and we're talking about all these cool trips we get to do and all the travel we get to do. Keep in mind that like all of my trips aren't that great. Like there are trips where I end up in bed the entire time, or there's trips I've had to cancel and come home early. There's like stuff I haven't been able to do. So like I am still a person with severe mental illness, and I want people to know that like that is also okay. Like I understand that that's part of it. Like you might have an idea for a vacation, you get there, you're exhausted, you end up sleeping most of the time, you end up resting. Like that does happen to me, and I'm 10 years into my recovery journey, and I've realized, as frustrating as that is, that it is okay. If it's a trip that I really want to experience, or I didn't get to experience everything I wanted to, I'll make an effort to go back. But pushing myself beyond what my body and brain is capable of isn't going to help me enjoy that trip any more than just getting the rest I need and doing a little bit at a time or eventually coming back. Like that's how I'm going to get the most enjoyment out of these trips. That's how I'm going to be able to uh, maximize the positive experience that I have there. So I always think that these conversations are important. And the reason Kit and I wanted to talk about this topic was it's something I don't hear a lot about. And it's if you're someone who even gets in a car and goes for a road trip, because I know not everyone's a plane person. I think both me and Kit can attest to not being huge fans of being in the air for hours at a time, but we have to, given like her international travel and my constant work travel. So we put up with it. But even if you're just hopping in a car and driving a few hours away, like be prepared. Make sure that you're, recognizing your own limitations. Make sure you're packing everything you need. Like I overpack. I want people to know that too. Like overpack. Get everything you need. If you have to pay an extra $20-$30 for a bag, do it because like if you don't have everything you need, you may regret it. Like a lot of people can fill a backpack and go. I don't think that's necessarily realistic for people with severe mental illness who are traveling. So just do
Well,
your
most of the backpack's gonna be filled with meds.
yeah.
So
Yeah, if half of your backpack's filled with meds, you don't have a lot of space for other stuff. So
yeah,
I I
the
always
gallon
like
bag.
yeah, yeah. This is it. This is my whole trip right here. No
No,
clothes
I
or
was like,
anything.
I was literally on a I was on a trip. I can't remember where I was going, but I was on the airplane and like I was walking back to my seat, and there was a woman that like she pulled out her gallon bag of meds, and I looked at her and I went, "I have one too," and she went, "Yeah."
Yeah. For real though, I like that's so important. Like prepare, pack ahead, do what you need to take care of yourself, and that's just what I want people to know if they're starting to travel and they're in a position where they want to start traveling but they might be too nervous. Uh, Keep in mind, like it is a stressful thing. It can be nerve wracking, and so do what you need to make sure it's enjoyable.
And I do want to say there was a time on my recent trip to Scotland where my dad and I did reach our limits and like together. And it was on Christmas morning. We decided we were going to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to Old Town in Edinburgh, which is like the main drag of like the old city. That's like very, very, very old. And there's a street that is normally crowded with people called Victoria Street. And we went to Victoria Street early in the morning and there was nobody there. And we took tons of pictures. We had a great time. It was amazing. And it was just like kind of wild because like it was Christmas morning. Everyone was at home. And so we were out there and we walked around, didn't see anybody. But we were like, oh my God, this is a lot. What are we doing? And While we were really happy we did it, we then went back to the flat and slept for like 6 more hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, we're like, we did it. All right, we reached the limit. We went back and we slept. It might have been 3 hours actually. Now I'm thinking about it, but we slept for a while. And it was like, okay, that was just it. Like, we can't keep going. Like, we're gonna just sleep for a while. And then we woke up and we had our Christmas breakfast. It was great. It was a good trip.
And I want to also back up as a grown adult who loves naps. Like, take a nap, man. If you need a nap, take a
Yes,
nap.
naps. Let's
Uh,
go.
I think that we as adults, we're like, oh, we don't want to sleep during the day. That's wasted time. That's like, I'm like, honestly, I get way more done if I have the time
Mm-hmm.
to like take a nap. And like, when I'm on trips and conferences and at conferences and stuff like that, I will take a midday nap. So like, I'll get back to a booth and someone will be like, "Where were you?" I was like, "Oh, I was napping, dude. I left so I could get some sleep and come back." And that can help so much. And it's one of those things that like, it's so easy. It's so easy to like, take that little extra time to take care of yourself. It's one of those things where like, we don't want to admit we need it, right? As adults,
Mm-hmm.
as like as people who travel a lot, as people who try to portray ourselves as high functioning individuals with mental illness. Like, I don't want to have to admit that I need a nap halfway through a conference day, but it's the reality of the situation. And I think it helps people realize that it's okay for them if they feel fatigued or if they feel tired. Like, I'm well into my recovery journey, I still get that. So keep that in mind. Cut yourself some slack. If you need a nap, take a nap and take care of yourself, because that's how you're going to be able to really enjoy travel.
Yeah, I took a nap today. 100%. Yep,
I should have taken a
totally
nap
did.
today. We were talking about this when we started. I needed a nap today, and I didn't do it. But yeah, so we're gonna start wrapping up here, and we would love to hear from you guys. What are your tips and tricks for travel? Kit, do you have any final words for the people today?
Yes, I absolutely do. All those tips and tricks that Kody just asked you guys for, do submit them to our email at skitsandgiggles@gmail.com. But if you don't want to do that, you can reach out on TikTok, comment here on this video on YouTube, and we are on Instagram, Skits and Giggles at all those platforms. So hopefully, we hope to hear from you soon. And as always, the brain is a minefield, and we brought flip flops.
Thank you guys so much.